or two, 6 flips. You get the idea. But one key aspect that I change, at least when I'm trying to, track everything and diet down, is I will kind of pat this thing dry just to suck up some of that avocado oil that I cooked it on. There's already going to be some that got seeped into the steak itself. But if I can get, I mean, look at that. That's got to be at least 10 grams of fucking fat right there. That's almost 100 calories, that's not negligible. So, I'm sure if I wanted to be a scientist, I could weigh this before and after and find out, but that gets most of it off.
All right, so while that rests, now is the perfect fucking time to pretty much do, just a straight up fucking check-in, So this will be I might even splice a little bit of this later and kind of see the difference between my back pumped versus now unpumped. So this is after 30 minutes of fasted cardio at the Planet Fitness. Let's see how we're looking before any water intake. Well, actually that's not true. I was drinking some stuff earlier. But before any food intake, which is really going to kind of change how you look in terms of your kind of daily fullness. Like me later in the day, after eating everything, full 300 grams of carbs, I will be a touch, just a little bit extra beefy than I am right now. But let's run through a couple here. Might even scoot forward a little bit to get in the fancy pants lighting. Oh my goodness. Oh, one more. Oh yeah, side tricep. Let's see. Let's get a little extra zoom in there. Is there any tricep striations yet? Let's find out. Not exactly, but most certainly lean. Not extra veiny, just walking around like normal though. Like I'm lean to the point where when I'm fully pumped up, I should have some extra veins floating around all over the place. Actually, wait, no, I'm lying. One more. How the hell could I forget about the vacuum? Oh, goodness. What was I about to say? Fuck. Oh, yeah, no. So, definitely lean. See a little chest fibers already. No pump, no nothing. But, maybe as conceited as it sounds, there is still some body fat separating skin from muscle. Not that I need to get stage ready lean, of course. I'm just dieting in between bulks. But there's still room. There's still room for this diet to progress. My legs, though, they are looking pretty cool. So let's do a little zoom in. I'm not really, well, I don't think I'll ever be at Tom Platz level striations, but don't hurt a guy for trying to dream. So you tell me, how are the legs looking? How are the wheels looking underneath? There's some stuff going on for sure. All these fancy little cross lines, those will get crazier as I get leaner. Yeah, right, like these two right there, these little ones, those will only get more and more nuts as this diet progresses. And hopefully they get really fucking cool to the point where, you know, you can actually see fucking like real deep sort of cuts just side to side. You know, not even going along the muscle, but just giving it a little bit more texture, you know. But enough pumpless pose down. This isn't going to be a full day of eating, just a little breakfast action. And then we'll probably talk about some other shit, you know, to BD. Yeah, we'll talk about the food first. So, fancy pants steak, it's like 12 ounces. A little more than I would probably normally eat in one period. I mean, I do like to spread my protein out evenly throughout the day. I think that's the best method, just kind of having an even sort of intake of your, you know, your amino acids and your proteins in your system. You know, eating them throughout the day, it's pretty much the best method. But sometimes I just kind of like a lot at once. So 80 grams, that's within range. That's within. I mean, look, if somebody told me they had 300 grams of protein for the day, for one thing, I might think that may be a little high for their body weight. But if they said they had all those 300 grams of protein in one meal, yeah, you're probably just pissing some out. You're not actually using it. It's just too much all at once. But just if you go over 50 grams of protein in one meal, do not freak out, you know. That's not that crazy. And, you know, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to eat a ton of food at once and your body's not going to deal with it? That's just always seemed like a silly argument to me. But this whole meal adds up to 800 calories, including the fat-free cheese and a little bit of the protein from the low-carb tortillas. It all adds up to 95 grams of protein, 34 grams of fat, and 28 grams of protein. Or no, what am I saying? 28 grams of carbs. So, you know, 800, that is a little higher than I'd probably want for a single meal. You know, I've only got like 3,000 calories for the whole day. 800, that's pushing a quarter all at once. But again, that's kind of within reason. You know, you don't have to be so anal about everything and making sure you have only 500 calorie meals at 10 o'clock and at noon and at 2 and at 4 and at 6 and at 8. It doesn't have to be that specific. But rather than having a massive meal for breakfast or a massive meal for lunch, if you have smaller meals throughout the day, you're just going to have a much easier time being able to stick to your deficit. Because if you have a big ass meal at 9 o'clock in the morning, let's say it's 2,000 calories, you eat a fucking big ass plate of everything. Full blown American breakfast. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, toast, butter, everything. Even if you're a smaller dude, by the time even noon or like 1 or 2 rolls around and you've kind of ran through most of it and digested it, you're probably going to be hungry again. And that 2,000 could have made up for a good chunk of your daily intake that you actually need to stay the same weight. You know, so as far as I'm concerned, being a little more sparse, meal to meal to meal, dieting wise, is your best bet. But using some calorie smart options as well, that's always a good move. You know, if I were to eat these 4 tortillas with actual standard tortillas and normal cheddar cheese or whatever kind of cheese, whatever, this right here could be fucking 800 calories. You know, if it's fully loaded with everything, because that's 100 grams of carbs, that's 400. Oh my God. It could probably be, if I had 4 straight up like full carb, full everything tortillas, that'd be 1,000 calories right there. So just that one portion of the meal, by replacing it with a calorie smart move, drops your calorie intake by fucking, I wouldn't even say by half. That's probably too low. I'd say even by a third, at least for, you know, specific ones like that. And then, you know, a top round instead of a ribeye, That's cutting the fat down by like 30, 40 grams pretty much. You know, it's just these little things. Anytime you can pick a lower calorie option, which still kind of gives the same effect in terms of your enjoyment of the food. I mean, look, this might not be as tasty as a ribeye, but it's still pretty fucking good. These may taste a little bit less, well, real than a straight up quesadilla, but they're still pretty good. You know, you have to cut the corner somewhere. If I wanted to have a ribeye and some fucking like full cheese, everything, like just normal ass foods, and I wanted to eat the same amount of calories, I could do it. But then these portions would be much smaller, you know? So dieting, this will be my last little statement about that. But eating foods that have a high volume compared to their calories is going to be much more filling in the long run. You know, if I were to sit here and eat a fucking massive bowl of salad with like, you know, a no calorie dressing or something, I could eat the whole thing and have a fucking full stomach, but have only taken in maybe 100, 200 calories, you know? So stuff like that, the volume of your foods, those are little tricks which you should kind of try to maximize over time. But yeah, I'll start throwing in a viewer question every so often. So Chris Fisher Chris Fisher 1030, he says, "Hey Sam, could you explain how you figure out where to place the weight that you put your heels on when you do Smith machine squats? Thanks, bro." You're a real one for that. You're a real one for that one. But kind of a silly answer. You just kind of do it where it feels good. You know, if the bar is going straight down, just kind of get underneath the bar like you would normally, and wherever your feet land, whichever feels like the most natural foot placement for you, just slide a plate right there where your heels are. And that extra inch and a half of elevation, at least for me, it helps me keep my glutes out of the equation. But I'm going to sit here, play on my phone, we can get in the car and head over to the gym for back. All right, so since that steak and quesadilla, which was pretty much more of a lunch, not really a breakfast, because I didn't have it till like noonish. Since then, I consumed about 85 grams of carbs worth of hard candy. These little like Christmas shaped, it's like green apple and like raspberry flavored, whatever. But either way, 85 grams of sugar. That's what I've consumed so far, along with a bunch of water with electrolyte mix. So I know for a fact now I've got a reasonable amount of muscular glycogen floating around. You know, some sugar water pretty much in my muscles. Because when you're dieted down, I will say this, there is a short buffer period between, you know, eating a ton of like pretty much treats and actually gaining fat. You know, because in the same sense that your body is going to run off of its carbs before it starts burning fat for energy, it will also store its carbs before storing fats. You know, so if you have one day, and let's say you're dieting, you've been good for 2 weeks. Let's say you have one day where, fuck man, you lose control. The floodgates open. You just had 5,000 calories. Ice cream, fucking candy, chips, fried rice. You went out, you got some chicken lo mein, you had McDonald's, whatever. You had a massive cheat day. Not that I'd recommend it, but you are not in, what's the word I'm trying to think of here? Let's just say you're not screwed, because even though your weight after that one day of like a ton of fucking calorie intake is gonna spike, you did not just suddenly gain, you know, 8 pounds of body fat. Right? You didn't just suddenly put on and completely undo the progress that you made over the last 2 weeks. But, oh my goodness. But you did probably completely replenish your fucking, you know, your muscles' carb stores. So that's the logic of bodybuilders when they, you know, carb up for a bodybuilding show. You know, in the morning, they're totally dieted. They're pretty much completely depleted. I'm talking like day of the show. So they're totally dieted, totally depleted. And then over the course of that day, they take in about like 500 or, I mean, some of these guys are doing like 2,000 grams of carbs over the course of the day or the last, 2 days. And what those carbs are doing is they're not just immediately getting digested and then stored as, as body fat. All of those little bits of sugar and water and everything are going straight into your muscles, kind of pretty much storage centers, and filling you up. So what I'm trying to say there is, since I had some sweets, I kind of filled up my muscles glycogen. So I'm sure I'm gonna have a good lift, and I'm hydrated. Hydrated is honestly probably the more important part. If you don't have enough electrolytes floating around your system, I mean, for one thing, you're just gonna be physically weaker. The whole nature of muscle contraction, if you look into it at a fucking, cellular sort of level, it's all about like ion transfer and like potassium ions and magnesium and whatever else. I'm not a biochem student. But main premise of what I'm trying to say there is I'm fueled up and I'm ready to have a good back day. No surprise. But one more little tidbit before we actually start working out that I wanted to bring up was, oh my goodness, man. Look, it's not that fucking hard. Once you really get into everything, working out, macro tracking, dieting, doing your daily cardio, I mean, even just working out consistently week to week to week, like if you're kind of the beginner or you haven't done it for a while, even that is kind of a big step up from what your routine is now. Once you've done it for long enough, and once you actually stick to it for long enough, it becomes your new normal, So all of the TikTok posts where it's like, guys, they're saying the gym is their life, which I mean, I'd probably agree, but it doesn't stay a grind for long. The longer you do something, the easier it gets to keep doing. So, if you're concerned about your motivation, I've been seeing a lot of comments. It's like, Sam, I'm a 15-year-old, I'm a fucking 25-year-old, I've never worked out before. How do I get consistent? You just have to, I mean, it's kind of a silly answer, but you just have to be consistent for long enough, and there's those first few months that you actually get into it, those are the hard months, because you're not really used to it, If somebody jumps into an ice bath, that first 3 seconds is fucking rough. I mean, you're dying, I don't know if you've ever done an ice bath, but it hits you pretty hard. Or if you've ever swam in the Pacific, any West Coasters out here, they know what I'm talking about there. But yeah, that initial phase of starting something and doing it on a consistent basis, that's the hardest part. But the longer that you do it for, the easier that it becomes, because you get fucking used to it, It's like when you put a frog in a pot of boiling water. Or no, you put a frog in a pot of water, and then you turn the heat on. As that heat increases, the frog doesn't jump out. It just, because what I'm trying to say there is, the more you do something, you just get used to it, even though you're going harder over time, So, for anyone who's, let's just say you really feel like you've got to grind to even get to the gym on a consistent basis, and you've only, you're maybe a week in, you got a 1 week streak of consistency, keep fighting through it, because by the time you get to 2 weeks, it's going to be easier. By the time you get to 3 weeks, it's going to be easier. By the time you do 4 weeks in a row, it's going to be easier. And by the time you've done something for long enough, it just becomes part of your routine. Like, I don't want to say it's a habit. Like, I wouldn't call me going to the gym and working out and everything, I wouldn't call this a habit. But it is kind of becomes instinctual, Like, it's I wouldn't say second nature, but you really do get used to it. So if that's you, if you're kind of if you're really searching for something to get you hyped up, just think about yourself in 2 months from now, if you've gone to the gym on your weekly routine every week for those whole 2 months. Because for one thing, you'll probably be a little bit more developed, because you'll have 2 more months of working out under your belt. But also, by the time you're the guy who's lifted for 2 months, lifting for 3 months, that's nothing, you know? So that's my little shtick there. So if you were one of those kind of motivation seekers, I hope that got you a little bit of, just a touch of hype. All right, let's go warm up and start with something. Go. In terms of warming up back, I tell you what, it doesn't take much. I don't have the same, let's just say, internal stresses on like my rotator cuff that I do on like heavy pressing. Like chest is the day that I spend the most time warming up because I really don't want to, you know, have any crunchy reps. So I do some rotator, rear delt, forearm, tricep, and chest, front delt. Whereas with back, I mean, I'll just sit here, kind of play around with the cables for a couple of minutes. Nothing crazy. Make sure everything feels good. And then most of the warm up will really just be whatever machine I pick first. I'll sit there, you know, moderate weight, a little heavier, a little heavier, a little heavier. And then once I feel like I'm exposed to working weight, then the workout will really start. But I'll just sit here for a few minutes, do some pull downs from the top, from the bottom, every angle in between. Heavy rows, perfect start. Few seconds, rest, pause. That was a good heavy one. Tons of tension, but I think now let's go a touch lighter. Hold it a little longer. Yeah. Let's do the parallel grip this time. One more like that. Oh, a really good stretch in terms of my fucking traps. Okay. Let's do some pull downs. This pull down is a touch light, but something about like the strength curve, or I don't even know. It just feels pretty good. So this is gonna be a squeezing style set. One more at least. Wider grip. Do some tempo reps. One moment of rest pause. Make the grip a little narrower. Oh, goodness. So these two sets were not so, let's just say, traumatic. But burn and pump wise, very nice. Very different from that first set of rows. But let's move on to whatever, you know, row, pull down, pull over. I'm open to anything. All right, plan now. Seated, single arm, heavy pull down. If you believe or you know that one of your lats is a bit wider than the other and a little bit stronger than the other, let's say you're, well, fuck, man. If you do any throwing sport, I can almost guarantee your throwing arm is going to have a stronger lat because you've worked it a little bit more just from, you know, life. So it's kind of a common occurrence. You know, don't feel like you're alone. So adding some single arm stuff, it will help. So for me, I think that my right lat is a little ahead of the game compared to the left one. In terms of strength, they're pretty similar, but I can tell in lat spreads and then front double bi shots, the left one juts out a touch less than the right one. And that could just be an insertion type deal, but either way, it is a minor thing. So whenever I do single arm stuff, however many reps I fail at on the left side, like let's say I get 20 with a couple partials, even if the right one can do like 23 with a few partials, I'll cut it at 20, just so that the right one gets just a touch less stimulus and the left one can kind of catch up. But by doing it like that, you never let the weak side overpower the strong side. You know, if your left bicep was half the size of your right one, if you just completely neglected your right bicep for weeks or months and only worked the left one, your gauge on when the left one's going to catch up is going to be way off. And then your left arm is going to be bigger than the right one. You know, it's not something you have to address that directly. And a lot of imbalances will just clear up over time. But some single arm stuff, starting with the weak side first, is a very good approach. At least in my mind. It's worked for me pretty well. My left bicep used to be way smaller than the right one. And now they're about even. All right, come on. Okay, fuck. One more. Oh, I lied. Not another single arm, but a double arm kind of long D handle type situation. Now, I love this towards the end of back because I'm getting the stretch of a pull down, but the contraction of a row. It's kind of a combination. So maybe 1 or 2 here, and then finish with like, well, who knows? This might be the last set if I feel like my back is fully stimulated and pumped. But I think I probably have at least 2 good ones here and maybe another movement. All right, there we go. One more. I'll actually do a superset. Burn out with pullovers first. Just another straight up set. Actually, no, fuck it. Let's do another tempo set. Yeah, what am I thinking? Yeah. I love these. If you've never done it before, highly recommended. You know, do half the rep, pause it, and then finish. You know, I'm not one to say that every one of your reps has to be perfect and you're not allowed to swing a little, but I do like some controlled sets like these because, you know, you completely kill your momentum. If I'm curling the hundreds, I mean, I can get it swinging at the bottom and then ride that momentum up the top. But if I do kind of a half, you know, pause rep, I get halfway up, pause the momentum. All I can fucking rely on is my bicep strength to actually finish it. So if you got a tough time with the mind-muscle connection, doing some of these sets, I think will help you. But let's bust one out. No point talking about it. All right. No. 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 Okay. Those were solid reps. I want to finish with something I can be a little more dirty with, but we're close to done. Back's already pretty fucking pumped. There we go. Last set of rows. I just did a set of pull-ups to pre-exhaust. Gotta squeeze these things as hard as I can. Okay. Back is fully pumped. Let's go pose down. Ooh. All right. You tell me. Is my back pumped or am I a chump? Those are the only 2 possibilities to finish a back day. So, even not doing a spread, it already looks fucking nice. Let's move into the lighting a little more. I think we might be in pump territory. I'm relatively certain. So let's actually see what's underneath this fucking big blue shirt. Starting to see some taper going on. We're starting to see a little more taper. We're getting wide up top and nice and trim down below. Not that I ever put on so much body fat that I get like a huge midsection. I'm definitely always on the leaner side, but even just that little, I mean, I've still got some to go, but like even just this little bit of, I mean, I can get a good little grip on it. Once this starts thinning out, even just a little bit at a time, week by week, you notice. I'm not even doing a vacuum. This is just fucking standing relaxed. Oh yeah. Oh, we're getting wide. Oh, what other back poses are there? Not really any. Maybe a little, kind of an older school lat spread. Still fucking solid. But unpumped, you can really see that my shoulders are overpowering my chest. Like just sitting here in a fucking kind of a standing relaxed, I feel the shoulders are kind of overpowering the pecs, especially in kind of a crab shot like this. But the arms appear to be developing quite nicely. Oh my goodness. We're even starting to see some fucking brachialis pop out of there. Oh yeah, what am I talking about? We got the Arnold pose, yeah. Here we go. Oh. Let's hope I hit that shit well. But yeah, man, back pumped, stomach getting trim. I foresee another, honestly, probably a bit longer than a month, maybe another 6 weeks or so. But yeah, I didn't step on the scale this morning, so I'm not exactly sure what my morning weight is. I think I'm just about at 240 or so. But at this body fat and being dieted down and depleted, this is the heaviest I've ever been. So give it one more month and then it'll be the freakiest I've ever been. Because unfortunately, heaviness and freakiness do not always go hand in hand, you know? If there was a guy 40 pounds lighter than me right now, but he was bone dry shredded, if we were posing together, you know, sure, I look kind of cool, you know, I'm doing all my what's and whatever, but the freak factor from having crazy chest striations all over and veins and everything, let's say he's got a tan too, and I'm just as pale as I am now, the freak factor, he'd probably have it. Now the size factor, of course I'm gonna be bigger, but this is kind of how, after you've bulked and cut for a little while, there's kind of this sort of transition. Like this is your starting period, or should I go over here? Yeah, it'd be, so let's say you start right here. This is your peak bulk, and you wanna get here, which is you dieted down. At first, let's just track your freak factor. Your freak factor is gonna fucking crash instantly. Because when you're bulked, even if you might have a bit more body fat on you, that's as big as you ever are. You're big, you're strong, you're full of carbs, you get pumped to shit after 2 sets. It's a good state of being. And as soon as you start dieting down, all of that intramuscular carbs and water and everything that makes you big and full, it just seeps out of you, you know, because that's your body's quickest acting energy source. So if you put yourself in a deficit where your body needs to find internal energy to run, it's going to use up all your carbs and intramuscular water first. Well, not the water part, but the carbs. And then it'll start doing your body fat a bit slower. So as soon as you start dieting down from peak bulk, freak factor crashes. But it comes back. And if you get legit lean, your freak factor will actually be higher than it was in the beginning when you were fully bulked. Because now you've got a similar amount of muscle mass. Well, actually, I mean, as long as you didn't lose any and you weren't crash dieting like a nut, your muscle mass should be pretty similar. You'll be depleted, but your muscle mass will be about the same. And you'll be lean and fucking veiny. So if your freak factor started here, you diet, you get flat, then you get leaner, fucking diced, then your freak factor is back up here, which is where we all want to be. So I'm about halfway, right? Started here, fully bulked, pretty freaky. Immediately crash, because once you, that first week of dieting, you're not only the flattest that you ever are, but you're also the fattest, you know, because you haven't actually burned much body fat off yet. So that was that first week. And then we're about, 3-4 weeks in, or no, not 4. We're getting up to like 5 weeks in now. So I'm about halfway towards that full freak factor look, which is going to be in about another month or so. And since I've done it before, I know that that freak factor is going to come in. So the fact that I'm not there yet does not demotivate me at all. Once you've worked out and you've made legitimate physical changes to your body, not only does that show you that it's possible, but subconsciously, it just makes it seem so much more attainable. If you've never worked out in your life and you watch somebody talk about, if you fucking listen to me talk about all this shit, I'm saying a million fucking specific lingo terms about calories and intermittent fasting and your protein and amino acid arrays and just a bunch of mumbo jumbo, right? So it sounds kind of fucking intimidating. I don't mean to say it like that, but there are a lot of moving pieces when it comes to this whole, gym bodybuilding type thing. But once you've gotten into it, it'll start to make sense. The pieces won't be moving randomly. You'll actually be able to see what's going on and understand it. And then it won't be a question of, okay, will I be able to diet down? Will I be able to grow? Like once you can see it in your own mind and you know that you can do it, it's no longer a question of if, it's just a question of when, So once you've lifted for long enough, like I was talking about in the car, it doesn't become an intangible reality. You can actually see the path that you're going to follow. And once you've walked it a little bit, you get much more comfortable. And then you don't have to think like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to keep working out. It just, now you're just doing it. And results will come in as long as you push yourself hard over time. So that's the state of being that you want to get into. You want to get comfortable enough, be consistent enough, and that'll make you confident enough that it's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when. So, good little conclusive speech right there. Let's bounce. I'm a happy camper. Back day complete. A lot of squeezing sets, a lot of controlled weight. Actually, almost all controlled weight. Even that first set, even though it was pretty heavy, I still wasn't jerking it around too much, So don't get me wrong, right? Don't be misconstrued by my, let's just call it, enjoyment of some nasty sets. Like, I will admit, that one at the end where I was, what was I doing? Yeah, like those rows at the end when I put the bench up to that cable, those were nasty reps. But that was the finisher. That was just to try to squeeze as much blood into my back as possible. But for the majority of your working sets, yeah, be it a really heavy set or you hit muscular failure at like 8 reps or so, and then you get some partials out to really burn out, or doing some sets where you don't necessarily hit complete muscular failure, you kind of, pretty much burn out. That's what keeps you from doing any more reps. In either case, as long as the sets are hard, I think you're good. But I don't think is one. I think they're both two sides of the same coin. To the point where I would not want to do every set with like absolutely as much weight as I can handle, because then I'm going to miss out on that squeezing, holding style. But I also wouldn't want to do every set light, really squeezing and holding it, because then I wouldn't get that mechanical tension on my fucking muscles that a real heavy set will give me. So an even mix, right? It's like the pen and the sword, right? You got the hammer and the chisel. You can hit things really hard, kind of activate everything, or be a little bit more precise, specifically target whatever else, squeeze hard. But in either case, as long as your sets are hard, then I think you're good. And for me at least, I don't have them planned per se. Like, I don't go into the gym and plan like, I'm going to do 3 really heavy sets, 1 lighter squeezing set, another heavy one, a light squeezing one. At this point, I kind of just go by feel, because I've said this a couple times, but I've done. That car was like doing an optical illusion for me for a second. But so at this point, we're getting close to 2,000 lifts. Not 2,000 yet. It's only been 5.5 years ish. And of course, the first year and a half of those lifts were early bird, kind of noob style, so they maybe weren't the most effective. But, I'm coming up on 1,500 workouts where I'm the one in control of what I'm doing. I know how everything feels. I've seen the results that it gives me specifically, and I've kind of toned it down to where I know what kind of sets I'm going to enjoy. And not just because I want to do a set and say, oh, I really like that set. What kind of, tells me if I like a set or not is how I know it's going to affect my end goal of the workout. If I did a ton of really heavy sets, like I am known to do, and every workout I didn't have much of a pump, I didn't really feel very stimulated, all I felt was like kind of a baseline level of fatigue, and I was like, oh, that was a bad workout. And then guess what? I probably wouldn't do those heavy sets. And if I wasn't making gains, then I definitely wouldn't do those heavy sets. But the fact that they do let me have good workouts, the muscles that I'm targeting get stimulated well enough to grow and increase in strength, to a degree, of course. I'm never going to do a pull down with 5 plates added to it. There is a limit of, let's just say, usable weight. And then, that's also contrasted by some lighter squeezing sets as well. So in either case, make sure you go hard. I feel like I'm saying that all the time, but the reason I say that is because it's the most important part of your fucking training. If someone trained 4 sets per workout, if for the next 6 months, or let's say once I start bulking up, if for the whole bulk, all that I did was 4 set workouts for every body part. My chest day was only 4 sets, maybe 2 sets of bench, a set of pec deck, and a set of cable flies. My back day was a set of pull downs, a set of rows, a set of pullovers, and then maybe a set of rows again. Legs, leg extensions, squat, leg extension, leg extension. You get the idea. If all I did was 4 sets, that may not be as many, sets as necessary. Or may not be as many as necessary. So it could be a little bit low on the volume. But as long as I made those sets fucking nuts, and, I ate in my calorie surplus, I think it'd be enough to stimulate muscle growth. Now, I don't think that'd be ideal. I think I'd probably want to do a little bit more volume than that, because I'm fully bulked, I'll be able to handle it. And following the same style, if I were to do 12 sets for every body part, and make sure that I went hard and had good workouts every time, and I still ate in my fucking bulk, I think I would still fucking grow. So in either case, I'm not saying one is guaranteed better than the other. What I'm trying to say is, you can change your training in terms of its style and its volume and whatever pretty drastically. 2 people can train in dramatically different ways, but as long as the core components of their intensity is fucking peak and they're actually pushing themselves hard to the point where, other people are noticing. I know when you see somebody training, like a schmuck, and when you see someone actually pushing themselves hard. And not just for 1 set, for their entire workout. Both of those guys are going to grow. So don't get too hung up on, oh, how do I improve this style of my training? How much volume? How many should I be progressively over? No, I think you're overcomplicating it. You're losing touch by focusing on the details, right? If you look at a fucking masterpiece painting, it's not all dramatically photorealistic. If you cut out just even a 3-inch square of a big ass painting you might not even know what the fuck it is. You know, it's just paint splotches. But when you back up and you see the big picture, it starts to make more sense, you know? So what I'm trying to get at there is, as long as you're focusing on going hard and on a consistent basis, you're stepping up your level of intensity and you're really bringing it every workout, and then you combine that training stimulus with proper food, proper sleep, proper hydration, potentially some supplements, you know, be it legit or lucrative, you're going to make progress, you know? So do not, it's just a little bit of a gripe for me to see some insane back and forths and comments and videos and, you know, science-based ego. I will admit though, at least the science-based lifter guys, they explain themselves a little better. You know, any ego lifter posts, it's always just like, shut the fuck up and lift heavy. You know, I will, if we're being real, I don't think I'm that much of an ego lifter. You know, I do have a pretty systemic approach. But, to an extent, I also do think, yeah, shut the fuck up and lift heavy, you know? Right? If you go up to a gym in the fucking early 2000s, any of my slightly older audience, I'm talking maybe, who's beeping at me? Do I know this guy? What's up? It's somebody. But what am I thinking? But oh yeah. So if you're in my 35 and older demographic, and you've been lifting since you were a teenager, you know what I'm talking about, right? For you guys, this is probably a crazy dramatic shift in terms of what people talk about when it comes to working out, you know. And I think it's just consequence of the social media. You know, I'm not saying Instagram's ruining your brain or anything, but you know, it's just kind of easier for word to get around. And it would make sense, you know. It's kind of silly for me to say, like, don't listen to the guys who tell you to do 5 reps in reserve sets and, like, you know, mezzo reps and real fancy pants styles or whatever else, because that sounds like it would work better. You know, they're explaining themselves well, they have studies to back it up, they're like, this is how it's done, you know, yada yada, insert whatever. But I think it's a fucking, you know, an overcomplication, right? You don't need a 10-page instructional worksheet to tell you how to flip a switch and turn your lights on. You know, you just got to do it. So, as far as I'm concerned, your training intensity will have a much larger impact on your training performance than, you know, the hyper-specific details of your training overall. And you got to remember, if your goal is to grow and you're using your noggin a little bit over time, then you're going to adjust your training accordingly. Because you're going to, you know, let's say you try something for a few months consistently and you're like, okay, this is not working. This German volume thing is not working for me. This is way too many compound sets. And then maybe you get a little bit more Mike Menser-ish and you drop your volume. Maybe you're only doing 6-set workouts. You're making sure that those sets are really fucking hard. And then you're like, oh, holy crap, I'm fucking growing, man. This is sweet. You know, that should kind of be a constant flow chart that's running in your mind. You know, every few weeks, you should run yourself through this little program. Am I progressing? This is the big question up top. Am I progressing? Yes or no? If yes, continue. Sounds like you're in the green, man. You're doing good. If no, okay, am I getting good sleep? Am I actually eating the proper amount of carbs, proteins, and fats for either bulking up or dieting down? You know, am I even really training that hard? Right? And if all of those questions are yes, then, you know, maybe then I would recommend you adjust your training. Maybe change your volume, throw a rest day in or so if you really need them, you know, stuff like that. But this isn't something that I think anyone who's really making gains needs me to tell them, you know, because if you're actually making steady gains and you give a shit about it, and you're like, you track your weight, you know your strength, you look at your progress pictures over time, you know, okay, I was training like this here and I was eating like this is how I was looking then. Okay, now I can tell maybe I'm a little older, my metabolism's not as crazy, I can't be eating so many sweets. let's back off on the ice cream, you know, let's maximize some more complex carb intake, you know, like shit like that, you know. And what I don't want you to do, what I definitely do not want you to do, is look to any one specific person for all the answers. And what I mean by that is no YouTuber, bodybuilder, coach knows your body as much as you do if you've been training consistently and you've been kind of actively thinking about your training, you know. So you're the one in control, right? You're Captain Kirk. Are you going to crash this shit into the sun, or are you going to, I don't know, I'm not really a Star Trek guy, but that's what I'm saying, you know. By figuring things out, trying things, experimenting, seeing what ends up working for your own build, that is going to be so much more valuable than just listening to some schmo tell you that you should do less volume and that cardio is killing your gains. You get what I'm saying? So that's my shtick there. Time to go home, chair down, get some sleep, do my cardio in the morning, and repeat this goddamn process. What the hell am I saying? Repeat this goddamn process. Yeah, with the little brain fart right there. Probably low on blood sugar. I gotta eat something. But I'll see you tomorrow for arms.